Boom, 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 boom. Bum, ba-da, ba-da, bum, bum, ba-do. And just a few more seconds. Okay. And hello. Now, I know that most of you will probably notice that there's a missing little white fur ball right here. And hi, Kim. She's okay. She's fine. What's happening is I did laundry today. There's a laundry basket full of nice, warm, soft towels. And she has claimed that laundry basket. So yeah, she's kind of curled up. She's gotten under one of the towels and is using it almost like a little den. You know, it's just utterly adorable, and I'm not going to bother trying to dig her out because she's too comfy and stuff like that. Yeah, the kitty is not here right now. Just to show you, this is her right now. That was taken about 30 minutes ago. Yeah. And remove. Okay. So, oh, I gotta do one thing real quick. There, that's better. Yeah. So, what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be going over posing. I'm not going to actually sculpt a figure today. I'm going to talk about how we save the poses, how we do partial poses, and things like that. So, let me go ahead and fresh. Okay. And now I go and open up. Yeah, here we are with our buddy. Now, one thing that I like to do when I'm making poses specifically is up here, this little grid-shaped thingy. Oh, hold on a second. Let me go ahead and I'm going to make sure that it doesn't auto shift me down when I'm trying to watch myself. Hey, Mark. This button right here, we click it, we go to expand from selected, or expand all, either one can work. Expand from selected, and these are all the body parts, and it's in a tree. So, for example, all of the two right finger bones and the two right thumb bones, we click the arrow on the hand and they all go away. We click the head and the jaw and both brows go away. Now, this is so that, let's see, I need to move the right calf. Okay, there we go, right shin. And I can then come over here to parameters and bend. Oops, not supposed to go that way. Now, I'm also going to show one thing that I should have done at the beginning when I first created this figure, but it's not as important here as it could be. The knees should not go side to side. Ever. Neither should... That's another way to do it, is you just click on that little lock icon. Neither should the elbows. So the forearm side to side is locked, and this forearm side to side is locked. Now, let me show you something interesting. Let's bend this leg forward and bend the knee back, and then twist the thigh so that it's more like it would be if he was sitting. Okay, now in the real world, you can't do this either. Can you? And if you could, something's wrong. I didn't put limits on the joints of this figure, mostly because it also could be used for, like, you know, somebody breaks their elbow or whatever for casualty purposes. It's better to move the foot side to side if you do it by twisting the calf, because that's where most of the actual motion comes from in an actual person. By the same token, when it appears to be moved side to side, it's actually the thigh has twisted. You know, so a lot of poses will look wrong, or rather will look right until you start to actually draw on the muscles, and then you realize, you know, you've bent the arm sideways. That's one thing to keep an eye on. And hold on just a second, I gotta check a message I just got. Sorry about that. And now let's go ahead and pop back into the view, back to here. Now, one thing that I like to do is I like to, once again, to repeat what I said in one of my special editions. Your hips and chest should never be parallel to each other or the ground. Give them even just a little bit of side to side and bend. That's actually quite a lot for both of them. So for example, I'm going to go ahead and move this leg side to side so it's straight down. We go to a front view. And we also want to, actually, while I'm thinking about it, we also want to pull it back a bit, which is the X rotate on this thigh, or bend. And the positive will bring us straight down. Now when we go from the front view, we can see that this foot needs to come up a little bit and rotate side to side just a little. Hit Control D, and if we zoom in, it's hard to see in this picture, but there is a ground line that you can see. We can go ahead and bring this in just a little bit, just enough, and a bend. There we go. Now his lower half is bent, but he's a little bit too far back. So what we're going to do is we're going to pin translation and rotation. What this does is, unless you push it too far outside of the length of the joint, when I move something above it, like his hips, the feet tend to not move as much. So I'm going to bring his hips forward a bit and up a little bit, and the end result is, as you can see from the front view, he's a little too high up. It has pulled his feet off the ground. So now we got to go ahead and pull the feet back down. and that'll help us get him back on the ground. So, we have a much more natural leg stance for a standing position. We need to kind of, I'm going to use this tool right now is only for moving in the X, Y, and Z. This tool is only for rotating. Bending it, you can either rotate it like this, or you can use the sliders over here. And this tool is only about scaling. Whoop. We're going to drop the scale to 100%. Yeah, for rotate and translate, 0 is the default, but for scale, it's 100, because it's a percentage of scale. 200% scale will be twice as high, or twice as long, or twice as deep, or twice everything. Now, we're getting a bit, if we look at the direction of the hips are going like this. The chest needs to go a little bit more to the side, so we're going to rotate it a little bit, just a little bit. We're also going to rotate it backwards a little. Now you notice that adding just a little bit of rotation, 10% or less on these body parts. Or, oh, I see. No wonder. 10% or less can still give us a good bit of character to the figure. He's already a little bit more arrogant looking. Now we're going to lower the collar on this. No, just a little bit. We're going to rotate it back a little and bend. We're also going to twist it a little bit. And then just a little bit of bend here. Actually, let's twist a little bit more, a bit back to normal. That's a little too much, but you can see how just a little bit of motion can change some things. We're going to bend it back. Actually, no, that's not bending, that's, yeah, we need to go back just a little. A little bit of twist. Go side to side a little. And a little bit forward. Whatever you do, for the most part, unless you're looking somewhere, most people's heads will end up facing mostly front and mostly even keel. Now, to do multiple joints at once, I'm going to click on both his fingertips and the finger middle. Right here, underneath the body part names, it says all. We click on it. Now, when we bend, both of them will bend at the same time. And then if we twist, now normally you can't twist your fingers, but the way these hands are set up, twisting represents doing that, because we don't have fingernails showing which way is up on the fingers. So we twist it like that, and then bend it just a little bit more. It looks like he's holding his hand like this instead of like this. It looks a little bit more relaxed. Now this hand, we're going to do something else. We're going to have him making a combative gesture. So we're going to rotate this shoulder forward. And we're going to bring it up. Then we're going to the forearm, and we're going to bend it and twist. Now, I have saved a hand pose. Actually, that's a bit too far, so we're going to unbend it a little bit. Now I have saved a fist pose, but instead I'm going to go ahead and make a new one. We're going to start this by bending both fingers until they're about where they should be for a fist, before we refine the knuckles, of course. Then I'm going to select thumb 1. Side to side down just a little bit, and bend in just a little bit. And again, the advantage of these hands is, since there's no thumbnail, no one can say whether I'm bending it like I am here, or if I'm bringing it side to side. Now, the one thing you've noticed is it's way too far out. So what we're going to do, I'm going to cheat. We can see that twist is the one direction I haven't done anything with, so therefore, actually, hold on, let's see. Yeah, there we go. Cheating just a little bit to get the thumb in the right place. Now, don't go overboard when you do this, because there will be problems. I mean, as you can see, there's already one problem right here. Let's go ahead and bring it to wire texture shaded, and you can see that there's a joint, or not a joint, but a polygon right here that suddenly jerks up to there. And if we go to the general mesh resolution and switch it to base, you can see that wrinkle a lot better, because we've just compressed two full polygons a lot shorter than they were just a few moments ago. We're also still going to need to worry about that vertex having given us a dimple in. But that's going to be on the sculpting time. Now, he's already has a natural looking stance. And I'm going to go ahead and save this file, this pose, and I'm going to show you how it's saved. Okay. I see a TJ, I see a William, I see a Kim and a Mark, and that's 4 of y'all. Now the way it works, I make sure I have the figure selected. File, save as, pose preset. I'm going to save this under full poses. I'm going to call it aggressive stand, or stand aggressive. Stand aggressive. Now, it's asking me what I want to save. And it has not just the pose, but also, let's go ahead and go to the, that's the left thumb. Shoulder, left forearm, left hand, and scroll down a little bit. Actually, you can, this window you can make bigger. Left thumb. Now, left thumb has a child of the left thumb too, but it also has its general proportions, including transforms, including scale. Because if you remember, we took that first left thumb joint and shrank it to cheat the thumb into position. So we're going to make sure that it does have scale. And you can, like say, only save one of the scales. 9 times out of 10, for our purposes, we don't need to worry about any of that, because it's going to save all of those. And we just, I usually also, by the way, I don't have compressed files checked. That's because it's an old habit of mine of occasionally having to go in with a text editor and manually edit the files. It's nothing you're probably going to ever have to worry about. It's just a habit of mine. So, accept. Bing, that's it. Oh, and that's Carlton. Yes, Carlton. What do you think you're doing, huh, you little furball? What are you doing? Boop. Yay. Okay, putting you down on the floor. There you go. Good boy. Now, when I go to Content Library, Daz Studio Formats, My Library, People, Miniature-Based Geo, Poses, Advanced, Full. There it is, with the little thumbnail. Now, if I had zoomed him in, it'd be a bigger thumbnail, because it basically renders a square with the same width as the current height. The height, the position of the figure on the height doesn't change, just the width does. Now, let's say I only wanted to save from the hips down. So that way, I could use that as the base to work from for a standing pose. Well, what I would do then is File, Save As, Pose Preset. I'm going to go from full to partial. Stand, well, let's just say stand body, because it's going to include the chest and abdomen. Now, expand all, uncheck all. Now I'm going to come over here. Oh, that's right, I can't do it yet. I gotta go first, select hip, abdomen, chest, and then we're gonna select all of the parts. Ah, I hate it when I do that. I went too fast. If you move the mouse while clicking on a body part, it automatically only selects that body part. So if you're clicking too fast, yeah, that's what I wanted. Okay, oh, and just because. Alright, so File, Save As, Pose Preset. On partial, stand contrapposto. Basically, a basic contrapposto stance. Now we're going to expand all. We're going to uncheck all. And then we're going to go to check only. Oh, wait a minute. It doesn't. No, that's right. This one doesn't do that. And some of them are weird. Right, so hip. We're going to uncheck the head. Notice that the head is now no longer selected. We're going to uncheck the right color and uncheck the left color and leave the rest. So that's going to give us our thighs and all of that. Okay, now accept. Now just to show you what happens, File, or sorry, Edit, Figure, 0, 0 figure. Now, somebody mentioned they were having trouble with poses. Let's go ahead and go into these poses. First, the partial pose. Notice that in the partial pose, because I zoomed in, the thumbnail fills most of the figure fills most of the thumbnail, whereas the other one it doesn't. Well, let's go ahead. Now, if I just have nothing selected, it gives me an error. An error occurred while reading the file. I've got to have the figure selected. And as you can see, well, I have to Control D to drop him to the floor, but it changed the torso, the legs, and the hips to fit what we had done. Now, if I went to full, it now has the arms posing too. That's the basics on the very basics on poses. Now, have you tried doing a pose where, let's say, let's give our buddy here a weapon. Let's give him something moderately small, but not too small. Something that would occasionally be held underhanded. Let's give him a short sword. Okay. And as we check on the short sword, just making sure, no, we want it a little bit wider. There we go. Now, let's say we wanted one. Let's go ahead and unpose this guy. One other thing we want to make sure that we have centered that because we want to do something fancy with it. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to Y rotate it 180 degrees. End result being he's holding it backwards. Now we go back to our poses. And he's holding the pose like holding the short sword like that. Well, we also need to move it a little bit because it's not quite in the right spot. So we bring it back like that. And there we go. He's holding it, getting ready to stab somebody. Now we want to save the pose so that the weapon flips like that. So what we do, we make sure that we have the short sword selected as well as the hand, because it's what the short sword is parented to. File, save as, hierarchical pose preset. That means you're not just saving the pose for the figure, you're saving a pose for the figure and anything else in its hierarchy. And I just realized it'd probably be a better way to demonstrate it instead of with the short sword, with the cloak. Let's make him a Batman type. Yeah, we're going to have parameters. Gonna rotate it out, and then rotate it out. You know, something we'd never do for something that's actually going onto the printer. But, you know, because this is just a bit too wide. But you never know. And then we're going to rotate this one that way. Alright, so we have a little bit of a posing done to the cape. Well, we have the cloak selected and the jointed base mail selected. File, save as, hierarchical pose preset. And this is going under advanced, full, stand, aggressive, cloak. Now you notice this time it gives us the hip, IK right, that IK R foot, that stands for inverse kinematics. I'll deal with that in a second. And for the left foot and for the cloak. We're going to go ahead and say OK, accept. Now, edit figure 0 figure pose. You notice that now it's back to no pose. Same with the cloak. There's no rotation, no bend, no nothing. We click on the mail, on the jointed base mail, iLibrary, Every time you add something to the library, for some reason, it closes this. Nature base geo, poses, advanced, full. Stand aggressive cloak. And the cloak posed to. This now has that twist added in. This now has that bend. That's called a hierarchical pose preset. And we're going to go ahead and delete the... Now, let me go ahead and zoom in on this foot. And you notice it has that little purple thumbtack right here, because we still have it pinned. Let's go ahead and unpin all. And that also removed the thumbtack from this one. What IK stands for is inverse kinesmatics. Inverse kinesmatics. Well, forward kinesmatics is the idea that when I move my upper arm, my whole forearm and hand come forward. When I unbend it, my hand follows the forearm. When I open up the first joints of all my fingers, the rest of them follow. The chain moves forward. Now, someone grabs my hand and yanks it over here. Well, the hand initiated the movement, not my upper arm. Somebody pulled it. That's called inverse kinesmatics. And what it's used for is things like, let's say I want his hand to be over here. By dragging his hand up, I moved his shoulder, forearm, and collarbone. And that's inverse kinesmatics. Kinesmatics basically is the study of motion, for all intents and purposes. Get some soda. Now, a couple months ago I did a character that was a hobgoblin. That, well, if I go back to this guy and I go to races and I go to hobgoblin, when you watch those other sliders, you'll see that some of them move. See that with hobgoblin at 100%, we've got goblin at 43, orc at 23, and there's even 16% of troll. We go back over to transforms and we see that scale has gone up to 112%. This Y translate doesn't count. That's from me using a control D to drop them to the ground for the pose. But that's all controlled by the hobgoblin dial. It does nothing on its own. It's just a parent that adds in these elements of the other dials. Now, that's one way to save it. I'll be showing you how to make something like that in just a minute, but the next thing we're dealing with is what's called a character preset. Now, we're going to go ahead and zero pose. And what we're going to do is we're going to play around with some of these races and try and see if we can come up with an interesting little blend. For example, let's try a little bit of Dragonborn, a little bit of Deep One, a little bit of Reptilian Type 3, and a little bit of Turtle. So far it's not that unique yet, but now we add in something really interesting. We're going to make him short. We're going to make him a waddler. Still not interesting enough. Let's add in some ogre. And a little bit less halfling because he needs legs. Okay. Now let's say that we decide that we like this particular blend character for, I don't know, some kind of elite let's go and say let's some kind of elite snapping turtle. No. Let's drop the turtle. Here we go. Elite fishman type. Well, we can go ahead and, if we wanted to, go into edit mode and create new property. You can see that right above my head. Now we can call, what we're going to do is we're going to call this Big Fish Test. It automatically, once we put that into the name, it automatically becomes the label. We're going to move it from adjustments to races. It's not going to be hidden, it's not going to be locked. If we really want to, we can change these colors. What that does, it changes the colors back here, the line above. So I'm going to make it bright green, just so you can easily see it. The minimum value we're going to drop to 0. We're going to create. Now, we go to property hierarchy. And parameters. Now, we go to races, and we see that we have a bright green Big Fish Test. We're going to take that to 100%. Okay. And what we would do then is we would go through and we open up Big Fish Test, subcomponents. These are things being controlled by. And what we do is, like, say, grab deep one, drop it under first stage. That didn't work. Okay, we're just going to click remove selected. How did I do this? Oh yeah, they changed how it works. Meh. Alright, so let's try the oh yeah. Right click on him, ERC bake. Oh, that didn't work. I'm trying to remember how to do this. Look, ERC bake didn't. Oh yeah. Well, let's go ahead and just drop this to 0. We'll delete it later. I'm gonna have to remember how I did that. Anyway, we have a fish. We want to save it. So we go back to scene where it's undo edit mode. And go back to just the main. File, save as, character preset. And we're going to create a new one called new folder called characters. We're going to call this Big Fish. Now, shape settings and material settings. If we were using texture maps and worrying about the surface shader, we could worry about material settings. As it is, we can just go ahead and uncheck it. And we simply hit accept. There. Now, edit, figure, 0 figure. Now, I'm going to go back to edit mode just so I can come in here into races, Big Fish Test, right click, and delete selected property. Okay, there we go. There's no big fish on him. Now we go back to the content library, and under characters we have Big Fish. We double click it, and he suddenly turns into Big Fish. Now if we delete the character and we still bring it in, we have a Big Fish. Different, It has a default material on it, unlike the kind of pinkish skinned color, but it loads it in as a new character. And if we go up to Edit, Figure 0 Figure, it goes back to human. Because it was never a full, right? It was the human with some of the races mixed and matched. But that, again, with him selected, we can turn him back into the fish. Or whatever you want. Actually, this almost might be a bear. And yeah, I think if we went in here into races and added a little bit of bear, a little bit of elf, to get the ears back, it could almost be a bear, and then we could sculpt it and twist it and modify it. So, let's go ahead and edit Figure 0 Figure. And actually, because I don't like him when he's pure white, let's delete him and go back to Miniature Base Geo and load him in. Now, one thing to remember, whenever you're adding a pose or a character, I have him in here. I deselect him. I go into characters, I double click Big Fish, and we have 2 of him now. See? 2 of him. If you want to apply a character model onto an existing figure, you've got to make sure to have them selected. Okay. Same thing applies to poses. If I... oh, he doesn't have his cloak. If I go stand aggressive cloak, the hierarchical pose, it still does it, because, yeah. Hold on just a second. Sorry. What I was saying about little Fuzzbutt here. Little Fuzzbutt decided that she wanted to get on Mom and show her how much she loved her by kneading. And none of my cats are declawed. Her claws are razor sharp. So she was puncturing, and that was not fun for Mom. And she didn't want to just, throw her out of the chair, so she had, oh yeah, she's got a kitty kiss. Hey, Fuzzbutt. Yes. Kitty kisses. Yes. Anyway, so I had to go in and get her from, and rescue Mom from her razor sharp love. She's 12 and a half years old. So, that is the very basics. I've shown how you can, like grab the, lock the feet and then grab the hip and move it to give them a bit more dynamism, to exaggerate things. You can grab the hand and move it. One thing, before you do either one, make sure you lock the side to side for both the knees and the elbows. Otherwise, you could have them bending like that. And that's not good. All right, let me show you. Let's go ahead and grab the hand here. Now, right now, the elbow joint side to side is not locked. So I grab his arm. We now look at the forearm and we see it's gone side to side 43%, which is beyond the breaking point, Zero figure pose. Whereas if we go in here and we lock the side to side, grab the hand and move it up. No matter how far we move it, when we go to forearm, that side to side is still at 0. No matter what we did to the hand. You can grab it now and grab it so far that he goes spiraling sideways. Yes, this is what can happen if you go too far. Ah! But we checked that side to side and it didn't go nowhere. We now grab it and we're gonna push it back around to here. We're back at a more natural pose for the arm at least. It's not, totally distortion. And it's still got 0 side to side. So before you grab and mix and grab and drag, it's a good idea to lock those elbow and knee side to side joints, or forearm and shin side to side. That way you can, if you want to, you can just, except for the fact that it's bending the wrong way. Ah! Alright, so we take this, we go parameter settings, and we're going to change that minimum to 0 on the shins, on the bend. Actually, it should have been the bend, not the side to side. Min 0. Min 0. Now, when we grab it and we pull it up, okay, it's not working. Do you know why? Because the leg is almost perfectly straight. So instead, what we do is we give it just a little bit of bend. Now when we grab the foot, it easily comes up and out. We can then take this and then go side to side, untwist it, or twist it more. but the shin itself did not break. So edit figure 0 figure pose frame, and there we go. Oh, die. Alright. That's good. Just to show you how to do it. Let's content library, base geo, load into dude, and what we do is we make sure we click on, if I grab his hand and I do this, looks okay on the first glance that he's doing that. Well, I check the forearm and we see it's going side to side so far that it's broken. That's where it should be. So instead, if I go in side to side and this little button here, or this little thing, icon, it only shows up when I'm mousing over that dial. It looks like an open lock, like a padlock. I click it. Now when I grab the arm and move it around, no matter how much I've moved it, it has not moved side to side. Edit figure 0 figure pose. So if you're going to be doing kinesmatics like that, where instead of bend side to side, bend, if you're going to be doing like a Roman style salute the old-fashioned way, you don't need to worry about that. But if you're going to be trying to do a Roman style salute by pushing it around, then you got to make sure that that forearm side to side is locked. When it's locked, even if I'm no longer highlighting that dial, as you can see, excuse me, it's still got the locked icon visible, whereas only the dial I most recently highlighted stays, and even then, once I've clicked on something, it goes away. Figure 0. Now when I click 0 figure, it's still locked. I have to manually unlock it. There. Yay! Take 2! As for what happens when you grab the hand and proceed to get ridiculous with it. Looks kind of painful, don't it? Edit figure 0 figure. Now the reason why he stopped moving at the abdomen when I did that those extreme things, well, you're going to see the same thing here. Because the hip is the root of the figure, the base from which the whole thing is oriented. If I had had the chest be the root, well, then when I moved the hand here, the chest wouldn't budge. It would only be up the upper arm. But when I grabbed the abdomen and tried to bend it, instead of bending forward at the bottom of the abdomen, it would bend the entire body forward at the top of the abdomen. Timber! Yes. Now, do y'all have any questions about how to pose? And how to apply the poses? Because remember, we have the partial poses. We have the full poses. And then we have the characters. Notice that when you apply a character, it doesn't change his pose. It only changes his applied morphs, the shapings. Another option. The shaping does in fact affect what's under adjustment, namely, well, under modifiers, like muscular. No ears. And now this top dial is something I've been using. I've been experimenting with larger than 28mm scale and teeny tiny 8mm scale. For use, itty bitty troops. I think I demonstrated that on the one figure that I did. But yeah. Any questions? Anyone else? I would like to reiterate the two laws that I have for posing for me. Number one, the whole angle of the hips are not parallel with the ground or the shoulders, and the angle of the shoulders are not parallel with the ground or the hips. Even a couple degrees can make it seem a lot more natural. If you look at him, his weight is on his left foot mostly, because the right foot, is slightly up to the side, but the left foot is straight up and down. And he's leaning forward ever so slightly. His weight is over the center of his feet, not his hip, not his heels. Oh, excuse me. Second thing, that's the shoulder and hip. You can see it a lot easier here. The changed angle of the hip versus the angle of the shoulders. The second thing is, a static pose is balanced. A dynamic pose is off balance in the direction of motion. Usually. I say usually because if it's a situation like a running pose where the front foot is just barely touching ground, it looks like he's coming into that pose because, hello Carlton, because we know the kinematics and shapes of running. Ugh. Do you mind, Fuzzbutt? Yes. Meow meow. A certain someone knows I'm not using my tablet, and so he decided it's time to flop against Daddy. Isn't that right? Yeah. And he's purring like you wouldn't believe. He just has a bit of a quiet purr. Don't you, little buddy? Hmm? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, let me put you down, buddy. Let me put you down. There you go. Good boy. Anyway, under normal circumstances, whichever way the character looks like he's about to fall. For example, we take a running pose where he's landing on his front foot. We rotate the torso and lift his arm, and it looks more like he's about ready to pivot in mid-stride to deliver an uppercut, or that he's just been hit and is falling back. With a very few exceptions, an off-balance figure looks like it's moving in the direction that it is falling. Number one, alcohol. And I mean at least 91% alcohol, not 70% rubbing alcohol. Isopropyl alcohol. Don't get denatured alcohol. That's some dangerous stuff. Second, you're going to get a new plastic scraper. You're not going to want to use the one that comes with the photon for very long because it gets chewed up real quick. You can get it for 99 cents at a place like Lowe's or Home Depot. Just go to the paint department. You're looking for a little plastic scraper. 3, I would suggest getting additional sheets of FEP film. Yes, these come in a little bag. I forget where I got mine, but I got a pack of 6, and I've used one of them. FEP film. You get one replacement with the machine. They can get easily damaged when you have a failed print. If you don't have a failed print, it'll take a while. And some failed prints don't leave anything behind on the film, so you don't need to worry about it. It just failed internally. Case in point. Where is it? Here it is. This one failed internally. It had a couple areas that were flat, and it has the base that did that. Now what happened was, it eventually caught back up and managed to get the rest of it off of the base, off of the FEP film. But this leg is super thin, and we have a whole section that just skipped out. But if it fails and leaves something behind, that can cause a lot of wear and tear on the film. Next thing I would suggest is a different thumb drive. The thumb drive mine came with, it's a 4 gigabyte SanDisk, and it died less than 3 weeks in. It doesn't read anymore. So another, just a cheap like 4 or 8 gig, just something small, because you're never going to need a lot of room on this. It's the biggest file I've ever done is, well, let's find out. The desktop, 3D printing, meshes, scope minis, photon, sort by size. Yeah, 101,000 polygons. 101,000 megabytes. No, 101,000 kilobytes. 101 meg. Bleh. So even a 2 gig thumb drive, like you can get for like $250. You know, just the cheap thumb drive. Oh, let's see what else. I also at Lowe's, when you get that little plastic scraper, also get the nitrile gloves in the paint area. You don't want to get nitrile exam gloves because those are stretchy and you gotta like stretch them to get your hand in there. And no, you get the kind from the paint section because they're loose. You just slip your hand in and you got your gloves on. The masks are there too if you want to use a mask. A lot of people do. It's recommended that you do. Some people don't. That's up to them. And finally, the last thing is an optional thing if you get a lot of sunlight where you are, and that's, well, Let me go ahead. Something like this. This, see those 4 little dots? These are UV lights. Mine, unfortunately, has a time limit. So, for example, you take your, let's just grab my Mr. Biggie. You stick them under the lamp. And 30 seconds later, you gotta take them out and put them back in. Do it a couple times on each side. And he's cured. Yay!
But I didn't know I was sick.
Well, you're cured anyway.
Okay.
And just to show you, yeah, like this. That's all it is. And since it's open on the bottom, if I have a rather large thing, well, I just put a book on the underside of each side, and then I can fit it under. Exactly, the ones for jail nails are exactly the kind that most people are using. So, yeah. And, of course, I would also highly, highly recommend one other thing. And that's paints. Paints. Because you know you're going to want to paint these figures, especially Dungeon Master. Nicely done, by the way. But yeah. Anyway, so are there any other questions about posing and saving and using poses? I think I showed a couple weeks ago when I did the weapon tutorial how to save a hand pose with the weapon, and that's with what's called the wearable preset. Empty. Put it in the trash can and get a new one. And yes, I have used this day in and day out. Yes, what do you need, Mark? You had to reinstall DAS. Okay. Yeah. That's what I'm on. Sorry. Windows 10, yes. The file library. What about it? Did it delete itself? Oh. The directory I have it zipped to is my library. Most of the time, that's going to be the name of your DAS library. There's 2 ways to handle this. One, you would go to, my documents. Let me make sure I'm guiding you right. Go to documents, DAS 3D, Studio, My Library. Now, Sometimes it's changed. Sometimes it's called content instead of my library. I'm pretty sure it's still just my library. Basically, everything that's in the data folder goes into the data folder. Everything in the people folder goes into the people folder. And so on and so forth and so on and so forth and yabba dabba 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 do. It's just a matter of just click and drag. The other option is you can put it on your desktop and then you do something fancy. And that's, we go over here to control panel, or not control, content library. And let's say we right click DAZ Studio Formats and add a base directory. And we go and we find where we have, we find where we have my library. We just click select folder. And it gives you all your other, directories. Actually, add a base directory. We need to find a secondary. That's already selected the core one. So we go to document. So we have two different my libraries. This one is the actual core one, and this one is stuff that I've picked up from other sources. And we can go back and forth between them over here. And then, since I don't really use this one, I can right-click, remove base directory. And now I just have my actual primary directory. That's your two ways of handling a new directory. It's better just to go ahead and dump it all into one. There are some people who will create libraries for specific characters. Like they only want to use this in this library. They'll do that. It can be interesting. Excuse me. Any other DAZ Studio related questions? Oh, one other thing. Something that I've done that you might find give you a little bit better prints coming up. And that's, I've been working with shrinking the head 95%. Oh, forgot to get all. For some figures. It's not for all, but it's good for some. And I appear to have... Okay. Let me go back to here. Okay, when would you want to have a separate directory for a separate figure? Heck if I know. I've just seen it happens mostly in the community for DAZ Studio as a rendering engine, where they'll have like a whole lot of stuff for the Genesis 3 figure, and so they want to make an entirely separate library for Genesis 3 as a figure. Oh, shrink the head. That's mostly for slightly larger scale figures, Like if you want to make a figure that's going to be a stone giant, I don't know if you will or not, in addition to being 300% scale, because 5th ed stone giants are 18 feet tall, you'd want to make the head a little bit smaller because it would also emphasize its size, and it would, by having that smaller head, it'll make it look bigger. Yippers. Well, another example of something that I did that I cannot distribute because it was based on copyrighted geometry. Get him out from under there. For my game, I made an ogre. This is a simple, ordinary, fancy little ogre with a teeny tiny little head.
Boom, boom, boom.
Whoop. Yeah. So, a teeny tiny little ogre. And just out of curiosity, let's see how big he is. From base to eye high, he is 50 millimeters. This would put him at the size of a hill giant in 4th ed and before. Look how tiny that head is in proportion. Yes, in 4th ed and before, as well as Pathfinder. Let's pull out a figure. This is the size of a hill giant. They're actually not really that impressive, are they? Whereas this is about how tall they would be in 5th ed. Quite a bit more, a bit more like about like that instead of that. Do you know why they did that? Just as a side note. Why they made the hill giant 16 feet tall instead of 10 feet tall or 10 and a half. Because ogres were 9 feet tall. And when there's only a foot difference between an ogre and a hill giant, at the heights they are, make the hill giants a good bit bigger and you got a bit more of a size difference. So any other questions? Oh, they also did that with dragons. 1st edition. Let me see if I've got that. I definitely cannot show this live because there's copyrighted stuff here and there. Monster Manual 1. Let's look up the size of dragons in Monster Manual 1, shall we? And that's dinosaurs and doppelganger dragon. Here we go. A black dragon in 1st edition D&D was 30 feet long. A red dragon was 48 feet long. That's actually not that impressive. If you load in the NIF files, that's the miniature and animation, or figure and animation files from Skyrim into 3D Studio Max, because there's an importer. It's just aimed at modders. Load in the human figure, load in a typical dragon figure. The typical Skyrim dragon is around 60 feet long. The typical Skyrim dragon is 25% larger than the largest standard enemy dragon in 1st edition D&D. And Alduin is much bigger. Heck, Bahamut was barely 60 feet in 1st edition. By the same token,
My wyvern.
oh yeah, let's grab this sucker right here, my hunting drake. Put him next to a human figure. Now this is out of scale. The hunting drake is supposed to be about the size of a lion. Put him next to a human figure and he looks pretty big. Not immense, but pretty big, right? This is also an FDM print for my CR10. Yay, I love the CR10. I broke off one or more of the spines, I think, but anyway. Let's find out. Well, what do you know? I started pretty close. It measures at 135 millimeters, and let's go ahead and make it 140 to compensate for the wave and ripple of his tail and hips. 140 millimeter. Okay. Breaking out the calculator. Now, eye high is actually like 5'5". 28 millimeters to eye high. Actually, this would be mine are 32 millimeters eye high. So, say 32 millimeters is 5'5". So we take 140 divided by 32, 4.375. Store that. Alright, times 5.45. 24 feet long. This is how large a white dragon is in 1st edition D&D. This is the size of a white dragon. Give him wings, he's a white dragon. In 1st edition. First. This sucker, my wyvern, he's still big, but he's not Alduin big. I mean, there's no way he's gonna swallow a person whole. You know. What do you mean that was terrible? What was terrible? Anyway. We can't exactly just grab... I guess what we could do is measure it there. That's a 32. That's a 37. And then come down to the back about there. We're looking at 127 to there. Come around at another 30. And about another 25. Comes out to about 200 millimeters. Oh yeah. Now this is 200 millimeters. This is a reasonable small to medium sized dragon. 200 millimeters times 5, or divided by 32 times 5.45. This is about 36 feet long. And I don't think that's right, because I know he's considerably larger than this guy. Oh, no, I guess not. Not really. It's mostly the wings doing it. This guy's also more... Okay, that does it. I gotta figure this out. I gotta find this out. Hold on just a second. Gotta find... Where did I put it? I have various hobby supplies behind my computer in 2 different boxes. Here we go. That's what I'm looking for. This is a leather thong. Now, I'm going to drape it along the back and follow this spine under, round to there. Okay. That's how long the wyvern is. Now, just so I can lay it out. There. Okay. Now, $100, $200, $260. Not 200, 260. Okay. So, clear. 260 millimeters divided by 32 times 5.45, 44 feet long, which means this is very close to the size of the largest red dragon in D&D in first edition. Now remember how I said it's reasonable for a medium-sized dragon? This was as big as they got. This. Vermithrax pejorative from Dragon Slayer would go,
Huh. Kinda small.
and Alduin would step on him. Well, Tiamat was actually smaller in the cartoon. In the cartoon, Tiamat was roughly the size of an elephant with 5 heads. Go back and watch. They almost never have her in the same shot as the kids. But they have her in the same shot as Venger once. And she's about the size of an elephant with 5 heads. Which means, alright, let's take our Drake. Let's assume that with half of his body length being tail, that he's got... but then again, you've also got additional body weight being wings. That it'll be... Well, I know she's in the same shot as Venger a couple times, actually. I think the only time I can remember was the one where they went to the moon to Tiamat's nest, and they found things like a net that healed when you put it over somebody, and they used it to heal Uni. Anyway, yeah, I am a font of useless knowledge. Anyway, so we figure it would probably have about half the body mass of a human it would probably have the body mass equal to a human of half her length. So let's be generous and say 25-foot tall human divided by 6 equals 4.166 to the 3rd power times 180. It would weigh about 7 tons. Or 6.5. This wyvern would weigh about 6.5 tons. The average elephant is about 7 tons. Well, is it 7 tons? Let's double check in Wikipedia. Effalump. Largest land mammal currently. Okay. Males about, yeah, that's about the same size as an elephant in terms of overall body mass. If my guesses are correct. So yeah. Good Game Hunters, you missed most of it, yeah. Right now, it's more of a question and answer session, and we're discussing miniature size. Like, did the measurements, and at current scales, my little hunting drake here is how big first edition white dragons were. A first edition great worm white dragon was this big. Even funnier, a first edition great worm red dragon. Now they didn't use that term, great worm. They had different terminology back then. Would be about the size of my wyvern. That's the biggest enemy dragon in first edition D&D. Right here. Yep. What? What am I saying? Oh, that's right. Yeah. Had a couple. I saw a couple dots right here, and I forgot I had accidentally hit it with a Sharpie. But yeah, this is the size of the largest enemy dragon in first edition D&D. At current scale. Ah. It all started because I pointed out that a miniature I had made but cannot distribute of an ogre is the size of a 4th edition hill giant. Anyway. Oh yeah. I also got one of my lizard folk painted. That dragon was my CR10. I printed that I printed that over a year ago. And just remember, good game hunters, you can always go back and watch the beginning again. Thank you. My baby girl. This is my baby girl. You know, it amazes me. People tell me, you never can just reach down and pet a cat when you want. You gotta wait for them to want you to pet them. They're not like dogs. Whereas if I do this, I get a cat suddenly look up. Come on, little buddy. Come up. Oh, now you're gonna be aloof, huh? Now you're gonna be aloof. Come on. Come on. Yeah, good boy. Most of them come when called. And I can just pet him whenever I want. Beep, 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 beep. Oh yeah, Fallout 76. I'm an Elder Scrolls fan, not a Fallout fan. Down you go. Hey. Belly. Squitching the belly. And the tail curled. Yes. Can I get a kitty kiss? Oh. No, I got a Snuffles, but not a kitty kiss. Oh, there we go. Mm-hmm. Well, it's with cats. Yeah, they have moods, but yeah, I know. It's Bethesda. That's what I'm saying is of the Bethesda properties, I prefer the Elder Scrolls over the Fallout series. Go figure. What can you do? Now, Kim, I honestly think that the reason why there's so many misapprehensions about cats and how affectionate they can be and all of that is because they're more affectionate now than they used to be. They are more domesticated because the idea of cats being a purely social pet is a lot newer than the idea of dogs being a purely social pet. You know, I mean, even up until the 1700s, cats weren't pets in the house. They were in the barn killing mice. You know, they didn't come up to you and do this. Snuffle and headbutt. They were out there killing mice. But with better methods of handling pest control, we don't need to have them working. Instead, we've got them for companionship. And so breeds like the Maine Coon are notoriously affectionate because they can be. And also, cats are more social than people think. They form colonies when they go feral. Anyway, it is 9:45. I've actually done an hour and 45 minutes of, well, it's about an hour and 15 on posing and articulation and that. And about another half hour of random question and answer. Yeah, Maine Coons are sweethearts. They're just so darn big. I'll tell you what, them fur things too, they got them there fur all over that place. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh yeah, Maine Coons are descended from the Norwegian forest cat, which was a water-loving cat that would swim and follow things out there. Well, she's about 12. Beep. Oh, come on, baby girl. Yeah, see, I could just reach over and just pet her whenever I want. Yeah. And get kitty kisses. And this one here is about 15. And Ralph, we're having problems with Ralph. He used to be about 17, and now he's probably closer to 14. And he's going bald in his back half. We're thinking he might be starting to develop in some kind of problem. So, yeah. Yeah. Ralph's the one that loves everybody. If a stranger walked into my house today, Ralph would be in his face going, "Hi, who are you? Pet me. What's your hair taste like? Oh, what's this? Let me climb up on your back. Oh, love me." Shinju would look up and go, "I don't know you yet. I'm just going to keep doing my business, just doing whatever I feel like doing until I make up my mind about you. And if I like you, then you'll have me rolling on your feet. If I don't, I'll just avoid you." And Carlton would be like, "New people? No, hide under the bed." 3. Shinju, Carlton, Ralph. Ralph is in the kitchen right now. This is Shinju. She's 12. Ralph and Carlton are 6, and they're both black with gold eyes, whereas Shinju is white and gray with blue eyes. And no, she's not deaf. A lot of white cats with blue eyes are deaf. Shinju's not. Yes. Oh yeah, there you go. I hit the spot. Yep. Now, any further questions on posing, or using Daz Studio, or proportions and size, or the cats? Okay, that's enough gurning. Any other questions? You're welcome, Kim, and I'll see you Thursday. There's 2 primary brands that I use for paint. The first, Army Painter. Mostly because I bought myself a big old set of them, because they were cheap. And you see that they're already starting to separate in the bottle, but I have agitators in each bottle. And it helps clear it up. It helps clear it up. The other is Vallejo, whether game color or just straight up Vallejo color. Either way, both of them fit in my little paint hangers. I've got this one, I've got the 31 slot, and I've got the 51 slot. I do have, oddly enough, one and only one Games Workshop paint, because I forgot I had gotten it. I've got a bottle of Agrax Surshade. Go figure. Bing. So, any other questions? Oh, and yeah, just because get a little better close-up picture of him. This is a very quick, what I would consider a tabletop war game level paint job. I'm still having problems with my artist being slow as all get out. My concept artist. So, Go figure. I really need to get on his case about reasonable time like it's listed in the contract. Crazy kids. So anything else, or do I go ahead and decide to go ahead and go bye-bye? I'm gonna count to 20. And if there's no more questions in 20, maybe I will see you on Thursday. You're welcome. Good game, hunters. Any other questions? Okay, alright then. I am going to go ahead and I'm going to hold up my hand. Repeat after me. When I reach 1, I'll be logging out. And that will be 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Good night.